Hello and welcome to Staying Ahead of the Curve. I'm Jeff Snyder, Vice President and Senior Consultant with the firm Camac Retirement Group. This program is designed to bring to you, the viewer, the latest trends and concepts in the U.S. retirement system. So let's get started. Welcome back, and joining me now is the Executive Director of the Washington State Retirement System, Director Marcie Frost. Marcie, great to have you here today.
Thank you, Jeff.
So, kind of changing gears a little bit, Plan 3 is one of the first hybrid plans, defined contribution plan. You've had great success. By the way, you have great success with your defined benefit plan too.
Right.
But the legislature and the governor many years ago saw fit to create Plan 3. Can you talk a little bit about the rationale and maybe take the audience through kind of a little bit of history about Plan 3?
Yeah, so the first hybrid plan came in 1997. It was really the teachers' retirement system that had that third tier created for them. And, you know, frankly, it really wasn't about risk balancing. It wasn't about, that there needed to be more responsibility by the member. It was really the investment returns that were happening at the time in, the mid-90s to late 90s. The markets were really good. And so there was a desire by the membership to have more direct access to the returns. So they thought, I think, frankly, that they could get a better benefit out of investing their own money with their contributions than what the state could get through our, the commingled trust fund. So that's how it started. And then I think, just based on experience in this state, what typically happens with one plan, another plan will come forward and say, well, we want access to that. Another plan will come forward and say, we want access to that. So we actually have 3 hybrid plans, one for public employees, one for teachers, and one for school employees.
But when you look around the country, your plan has been so successful, but you look around the country and you see other states considering the defined contribution as an alternative. Can you think of any best practices or in terms of implementation? I mean, as a consultant, I want to just provide ideas and concepts in front of the client, so I don't have a real dog in the fight in terms of DB versus DC, but there definitely have to be some best practices and considerations, especially around communications and education. I got to think that that's probably a real critical element and something you guys at DRS take very seriously.
No, we do, and I think, if you're just now looking at creating a hybrid plan or a DC plan, and you're doing it because your DB plan is not healthy, you're really operating from a little bit of a state of being in a hole, frankly, because when we did it, the DB plan was in good shape. We still are in excellent shape, but we weren't doing it because we needed to fix a problem. We were doing it because it was another offering that we were hearing from the membership. So even though we have a hybrid plan, it is not a mandatory plan. People have the option to go into it. So I think to the extent that that can be a best practice, that people could still choose the DB plan if they want to based on their own unique needs, or they could choose a hybrid plan based on maybe mobility. Maybe they don't plan on investing, or maybe they don't plan on spending their career at the state of Washington. So I think communication is extremely important because the hybrid plan is also the default. So you have a 90-day choice period. If you do not choose a retirement plan, you default into Plan 3, which is a plan you need to be a little more active in because you're actively managing your own investments, even though we're defaulting you into a target date fund, which basically you can set, and it resets every 5 years based on your age and retirement date. But communication, I think what we've really struggled with is getting our membership to pay a lot of attention early on in their career. We have an initiative going on around retirement readiness, and I think we're in the middle of a record keeper transition, and we're looking for a partner who can really could help us further that along. Younger people, I think, are challenged to think about getting older. And they have these immediate needs that they want to take care of, whether that is paying off student loans, whether that's buying a home, whether that's traveling. They're really not thinking about 20, 30, 40 years out. And typically in a DC plan, if you're not thinking about that, you may not be making the appropriate choices at the time that you're signing up. So I think one of the things we've done is built out our contact center so that what we're hearing in these customer interviews is that people want more of our time. They really rely on us to be that trusted advisor again. And so we want to do more push messaging. People typically don't ask us questions when they should be asking. Sometimes it's a little bit late, and if they would have asked that question 10 years ago, there's probably something that could have made a better retirement for them, as they're entering their 60s or their 70s. So we're building out our contact center to build in more call duration, is what we're calling it. Along that responsiveness of answering the phones quickly, we want to make sure that we have enough time to answer the questions that they didn't ask us. So I think that's also a best practice, is making sure that you have the time to spend with your customer population.
You mentioned the record-keeping transition you're working on, and that's, I believe, a consolidation. What are some of the factors that went into making that decision? That's a pretty big decision, a plan that's been around for a long period of time, and that was a very laborious, very process-driven thought process. So I just want to kind of get your perspective on key factors around consolidation.
Okay, so we run a very complex plan. We administer about 15 different plans, including a deferred comp program. And we hear in these customer interviews that this environment is very complicated for people to understand. And I think one of the things that we may have been contributing to was adding an additional relationship or an additional partner into that complexity. And so in the past, we had a record keeper that managed the deferred comp, we had a record keeper that managed the hybrid plan, and then you had DRS as an administrator handling the DB plan. And one of the considerations that we had this time in going out to look for a partner moving forward was, could we make it more simple? Could we simplify the contact center? Could we simplify the website? Could we combine the annual statements? Could we create better tools that would combine DB, DC, DCP, and Social Security? Right. So those were all initiatives that we wanted to check the marketplace to see if there was a partner out there who could offer that comprehensively.
All in the vein of, you've got to communicate effectively to your employee population.
That's right. Yeah. There's 3 pillars, basically, right? And we're kind of adding this 4th pillar, but the 3 pillars are really around Social Security. Do people really understand their Social Security benefits, their employer defined benefit plan or their employer retirement plan, whatever that might be, and then your own personal savings. And I think in Washington, we're a Social Security state, even though we have some police and fire who do not have access to Social Security. Our employer plan, which is basically the DB or the DC, provides a modest benefit. It's not a benefit that someone is going to get wealthy from. And so the personal savings is really where we need to spend more of our time in encouraging people to look at the retirement they want and how can they use personal savings to supplement Social Security and their employer retirement plan.
Last question I'll ask you about is around auto enrollment. And you look around the country, and that is a feature that's been adopted by mostly corporate and tax-exempt plans. But there have been some challenges having it adopted by governmental entities, and part of that is the anti-garnishment rules and other rules that exist, and it requires legislative changes. But is that a provision that could conceivably be adopted by, say, the state of Washington for its deferred compensation plan as going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something, it was introduced this last legislative session. The department weighed in favor of that as a policy for the deferred compensation program. Unfortunately, it was commingled with another policy that was not as popular, and we were not able to kind of disconnect those 2 policies to have the auto-enroll feature looked at separately. So next year, we are going to be very supportive of this, likely talk to my boss, the governor, about maybe this is a governor request piece of legislation to move auto-enroll through for state employees. We really believe in it. Right now, new employees are signing up at a rate of about 3 to 5% to deferred comp. We think that number can really improve, and we actually think we can reverse that number in the right direction, meaning that we have 3 to 5% of the membership opting out of auto-enroll.
And could you partner, you think there's enough room to maybe partner that or marry that with an auto escalation, or right now it's just really, let's just get them in the plan, and we'll worry about what the contribution rate is going forward, because we know they have either the DB or the Plan 3 as an alternative?
Well, I think you have to really think about defaults, which is another best practice, I think, in the hybrid plan, is thinking about your default options. The default, at least in this bill, was that it would be a 3% contribution rate, and that's in addition to the rate that you're paying in your retirement plan, and that the default option is the target date funds. And so we thought the 3%, having it be a percentage of payroll rather than a flat amount, was good, would help it with auto escalation once salary growth, kind of returns to historical levels. But at least at a minimum, getting auto enroll in, it was very supported by the labor organizations around this state as well. And again, unfortunately, it was coupled with something that was not as attractive from a policy position.
Great.
Yeah.
Director Marcie Frost, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks. I want to thank you all very much for joining us on this edition of Staying Ahead of the Curve. Hope you enjoyed the panelists and the insight that we learned today, and I hope you tune in again for more Staying Ahead of the Curve. Thank you, and goodbye.